Welcome back to The Explainer. If you're a focused learner looking to truly grasp how raw data is transformed into meaningful, actionable insights, well, you are in exactly the right place today. We're going to take a structured, step-by-step journey through the entire machine learning pipeline. We're going to explore how models are built, how they actively learn, and, crucially, how we use data visualization to evaluate their success and keep them honest. Because in data science, a picture isn't just worth 1,000 words, it's honestly the key to unlocking these complex algorithms. To make this super efficient, we're going to conquer this in 5 distinct stages. First, the AI and ML landscape. Second, how machine learning actually works. Third, visualizing and evaluating models. Fourth, the Python Data Toolkit. And finally, AI ethics and bias mitigation. Let's get right into it.
Okay, starting with part 1, the AI and ML landscape. Let's dive right into this by setting up our foundation so we're all on the exact same page.
So, what is the actual leap in capability between classic machine learning and deep learning? Well, classic machine learning is an incredible tool for making predictions, but it needs a fair amount of handholding. Imagine teaching a computer to recognize fast food. For classic ML to work, a human expert first has to literally label the images, pointing out, hey, this is a pizza, or this is a burger. The model then uses those structured, human-provided labels to learn. Deep learning, on the other hand, is a massive breakthrough because it mimics the neural networks of the human brain. It just ingests raw, unstructured data, like millions of pixels in an image or huge blocks of text, and automatically figures out the distinguishing features on its own. No human hand-holding required.
Now, you might be wondering, why does this matter so much? Because an estimated 80% of a typical organization's data is completely unstructured. We're talking millions of raw text files, audio recordings, images, the whole shebang. By automating the feature extraction process, deep learning unlocks scalable AI. It essentially allows enterprises to finally tap into that massive 80% of hidden raw data to do incredibly complex things, like powering real-time virtual assistants or catching credit card fraud the second it happens.
Moving right along to section 2. How machine learning works. Now that we know what these technologies actually are, let's look under the hood at the mechanics of how these models learn. At the highest level, machine learning splits into 2 main camps, supervised and unsupervised learning. Supervised learning is exactly like having a teacher in the room with you. It uses labeled examples to predict outcomes. You know the answers in advance, and your goal is to train the model to accurately predict those known answers when you give it new data. Unsupervised learning is a totally different ballgame. It uses raw, unlabeled data, and the algorithm is just set loose to discover hidden structures, organic patterns, or clusters completely on its own, without any predefined answer key. If we zoom in specifically on supervised learning, notice how it branches out into 2 distinct tasks. When the target you're trying to predict is a fixed, categorical outcome, like say determining if an incoming email is spam or not spam, that's called classification. But if the target is a continuous, fluid number, like predicting the future price of a house or guessing next month's sales figures, that is called regression. In this flowchart here brilliantly traces the data's active journey through that supervised learning process. We start on the left with raw input data, pairing it with our desired outputs to form a training set. The model then processes this through an algorithm. What's absolutely vital to grasp here is the dynamic, iterative cross-validation happening behind the scenes. As the algorithm churns through the training data, it's constantly tweaking and adjusting its internal weights to minimize errors. It's actively refining itself. Once it's validated and tested, the final output gives us our accurately classified data. But here's the million-dollar question. How do we know if that output is actually any good? That brings us to section 3, visualizing and evaluating models. This is where data visualization becomes our ultimate diagnostic tool. Now, what's really interesting about this matrix is how these abstract evaluation metrics map out visually. While accuracy is a super common metric, which is just the percentage of correctly predicted instances, actually, scratch that, accuracy can be highly misleading, especially if your dataset is imbalanced. Instead, data scientists rely heavily on the true-false positive quadrant, also known as a confusion matrix. By visually mapping exactly where the model predicted correctly versus where it generated false positives or false negatives, we can accurately calculate precision and recall. These specific formulas let us fine-tune the model depending on what hurts our business more, missing a true positive or accidentally flagging a false positive. Visualization is also how we directly compare different algorithms against each other. Here we have a comparative performance analysis studying regression models, specifically looking at gradient boosting versus random forest algorithms. Over on the left, we're seeing the mean squared error under high noise conditions, and on the right, low noise. By visualizing the data this way with box plots, we immediately see how these algorithms handle chaotic data differently. We can visually track the spread and the median of the errors, which proves that certain methods are just way more resilient depending on how much noise is injected into the data.
Ultimately, all of this intense visual evaluation boils down to managing one core concept: the bias-variance trade-off. Think of it like a giant balancing act. Bias is the error introduced by making your model too simple. It's like trying to force a perfectly straight line through deeply curved data. This creates what we call underfitting, where the model just ignores the true structure of the data. Variance is the exact opposite. It's the error introduced when your model is way too complex and becomes overly sensitive to random noise, which leads to overfitting. The entire goal of visual evaluation is finding that perfect sweet spot on the seesaw, ensuring the model is actually going to perform reliably out in the real world.
Section 4, the Python Data Toolkit. To actually manipulate our data and generate these brilliant visualizations, we need the right tools for the job.
And Python is the undisputed king here. Notice how this entire toolkit ecosystem interconnects to get the job done. First up, NumPy lays down the heavy mathematical foundation with array processing. Then we have Pandas, which is your absolute go-to library for manipulating and cleaning up data frames. Scikit-learn steps in to provide the actual machine learning algorithms for the classification and regression we talked about. And finally, to transform all of that raw mathematical output into the insights we just saw, Matplotlib and Seaborn bring the data to life visually. These libraries literally take complex math and turn it into clear visual communication.
But listen, building the model is really only half the battle. Maintaining it out in production is where MLOps, or machine learning operations, comes in. You absolutely have to track your model's performance over time. A model that was perfectly accurate yesterday might completely fail tomorrow if the real-world data shifts. That's why best practices mandate using tools like Evidently AI or YLabs for data drift detection. You have to monitor for concept drift, which is where the fundamental relationship between your features and your labels evolves, and you need to set up pipelines to trigger alerts when metrics start to degrade. A quick pro tip here: use A/B testing to compare new models safely without disrupting the experience for your users.
Okay, we arrive at the final, and I'd argue the most crucial stage of the pipeline, Section 5, AI Ethics and Bias Mitigation.
Let's move to and see how this builds our framework for responsible innovation by looking at the 6 pillars of ethical AI. As artificial intelligence embeds itself into the core of healthcare, finance, HR, you name it, we absolutely cannot rely on performance metrics alone anymore. We have to proactively design our systems around fairness, transparency, preventing harm, building trust, privacy, and accountability. Honestly, these are not just corporate buzzwords. They are the absolute required foundation for building any trustworthy system today.
And the most pressing of these challenges is bias, which silently creeps in through training data, algorithmic design, and application bias. AI systems are not inherently objective, right? They are exactly as biased as the historical data they are fed. And the reality of this is highly measurable and highly impactful. For example, recent empirical studies confirm that commercial facial recognition systems misclassify women and people of color at rates up to 30% higher than white men. Think about that. In healthcare, models trained on skewed datasets actively underperform for minority populations. When efficiency is prioritized over fairness, these biased models literally entrench real-world social divides.
So, the crucial point is this: we can no longer treat AI as an unquestionable black box. Combating algorithmic bias requires a multi-layered approach. At the coding level, we need explainable AI and fairness-conscious algorithms that actually let us peek inside the decision-making process. But tech alone isn't going to solve this. We are now seeing the necessary rise of robust regulatory frameworks, like the EU AI Act and the NIST AI Risk Management Framework. These initiatives represent really meaningful progress toward holding organizations legally accountable and standardizing fairness on a global scale.
While we've covered a lot today, we looked at how models learn, how we map their errors visually, the interconnected Python tools we use to build them, and the ethical guardrails required to actually deploy them safely into society. But I want to leave you with one final, provocative thought to reflect on. As our algorithms become exponentially smarter and more autonomous, are we truly doing enough at the foundational data level to ensure the outcomes remain fair for everyone? It's a question every data scientist, every engineer, and every focused learner needs to keep asking. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring the data.